use of language. Okay, so this is a show that like self-consciously takes seriously its like period nature with the different Jewish ceremonials and the different factions of the Pharisees and the Hellenistic Jews and stuff. Okay, but it's also a show that like makes a point of using very contemporary language and having very contemporary emotional responses to things. Yeah. I'm not okay. So I'm not saying that's on the whole a bad thing, but I think the show is quite insensitive to like the way that anachronistic language and expressions betrays anachronistic like thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. If that makes sense. Like
totally.
The net effect is to like there is a way to like get us into a foreign mindset that is still universally human.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recently read this novel called The Good Earth by Pearl Esper, which is a novel about Chinese peasants, and the syntax that she uses is unusual. The way they talk is unusual. It's of course in English, but it still seems strange, and there's a strangeness to it, and yet you still relate to the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very different way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it feels a little less like that. That's okay in general, but I think that you have to be attentive to like certain things that stick out particularly like a sore thumb, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and especially when it becomes like a self-referential, modern media saturated way of talking, that like sort of takes us out of the illusion.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's things that are ambiguous, like clapping, applause. I don't know if clapping was a thing back then.
Sure.
May well be. Doesn't bother me that much. There's also like
but there is something odd about like the Sermon on the Mount is over and now it's like, okay, then thank you, little James and John, you know, your work, we couldn't have done it without you. Everybody give a little clap.
Yes,
you know, like it feels like the end
well,
of,
and
of
Joanna
any
asking,
number of like
Joanna asking if they didn't take up a collection and saying she wants to help with the ministry, like all of that felt very like
yes.
Right.
We're in a modern megachurch setting, plus the staging and the
totally.
There's a scene where two characters give like a secret handshake and fist bump.
How often does the word ministry occur in the Gospels?
Oh, in the Chosen a lot.
Yeah, in the Chosen a lot, and that was something that I definitely was like picking up on.
The angels ministered to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. I don't know, you know.
Right.
I don't know if we would. I don't want to assert this with too much confidence. I don't think we get the word ministry in the Gospels.
Right. But there's like, they're often talking about the ministry, you know, and Jesus is the way, you know, like there definitely is something like anachronistic about that. Sorry, but I'm as you're talking, I'm
ministry
like thinking
feels like a subset.
Totally. But I'm just saying that all this stuff is like popping up. I don't want to cut you off. Continue, please. But
sure. Okay. Peter comes home from.
Oh no, I know what you're gonna do. I know what you're talking about.
From his trip, his big old trip. He comes home to his wife. He wants to get some action. I'm sorry, listeners. He's been missing his wife. They're back. And he is talking to her about something about studying, something, I forget how it even comes up, but it's very 1980s movie.
I know.
Oh, we're going to get some studying done, all right.
That's not
the exact line, but that's basically the vibe.
Yeah.
Okay. Same scene. Maybe not the same scene. Same scene. Basically.
Same episode.
Yeah. I've been thinking about our family, starting a family. It's time.
What?
Were they using contraception? I don't think that the show is seriously telling us that they're using contraception, but what else does that mean?
I know.
Are they using NFP?
And they wouldn't have known about cycles in that way, you know? Like, there wouldn't have been NFP. And so, so this whole notion of, like, it's time as if there would have been, like, a conceptual sort of, like, distinction between marriage
conceptual distinction.
Yeah. Like you
pun.
know, like
pun.
Oh, right. Pun intended.
Pun intended.
But yeah, no, that. Oh, dude, I was definitely squirming at that.
Okay,
I was too.
Jesus says something in the Decapolis about, you know, I'm here for everybody, regardless of race or creed. Okay,
Oof.
That's a very modern, like, political speech cliche.
Mm-hmm.
I saved this for the end of the episode because I didn't want to start it out and make people think that the show was just like this, hacky, because it's not like all the time. Okay. Gift used as a verb. That's all. It doesn't really say anything like
Martha Stewart came up with that.
Culturally. Really? Okay. So it's just weird. It just takes you. That's one of the things where it's not like it doesn't indicate a foreign way of thinking so much, a modern way of thinking so much as just like it takes you out of the illusion because it's a distinctly modern way of speaking. Okay. Last.
Wait, can I give a quick 2-second rant about the Peter Eden thing? Yeah. We know from the Gospels that Simon Peter lived with his brother Andrew, and that Jesus also lived with them. So this like empty house privacy thing that they established in the show repeatedly, as if like this is a nuclear family and you have to fill the house, that doesn't happen. You have extended relatives living together, crammed all together, sleeping in the same room. There would have not been much of any privacy ever. So that whole thing was a huge anachronism, and also just contrary to what the gospel establishes, which is that Simon lived with Andrew and Jesus comes to live with him in Capernaum pretty quickly.
It's also contrary to, like, if I can just make a quick side thing, they dodged a bullet with the brothers of Christ, obviously, in this season. Dallas Jenkins said it was never something he wanted to seriously address in the show. Who were these brothers of Jesus? Yeah. And so there's only one reference to it just to get it out of the way. They're not even called his brothers in the episode, but it's when he's in Nazareth and goes to see his mother, and he says, "Where are," I forget what names he gives them, but
Simon and Jude, maybe,
or Simon and Jude, and she refers to them as the boys. So it's ambiguous. Are these cousins? Are these brothers from a previous marriage of St. Joseph? Whatever. I'm grateful that they didn't go into it any more than that. They're not there for the holiday. The expectation is they would be part of the household or something, seemingly. But then she says they went to celebrate somewhere else. So there's some recognition of that. But anyway. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciated how they tried to dodge the bullet there. However, because they kind of set up the expectation that people live in nuclear family units, it almost doesn't work. Because they're almost, So I like that they tried, but because of what they were doing elsewhere, it didn't work as well as it should have. I'll leave it at that.
General quipping, just too many quips at serious moments, too many jokes. We already talked about that. Here's the example I want to give, though. On the boat, in the storm, Peter's walking on the water. Who is it? Thomas? I think it's Thomas.
Thomas.
How is this the second most incredible thing I've seen today?
Yeah.
Okay, no. Just experience the moment. That I really think, I could be wrong, I really think that is such a modern way of, like, it's like thinking in listicles. Like top 10 most incredible things I saw, with Jesus on the day of the Decapolis. The most incredible was the feeding of the 5,000. And the second most incredible, he's like mentally making his Facebook post as it's happening. Yeah. So that. But I mean,
it's also just like, it feels a little fan servicey. It feels a little like.
Well, that's what these self-referential jokes are in the Marvel movies and stuff. It's
exactly. And a lot of times these things, they made me think of like the prequel trilogies of Star Wars or something, or how this is unrelated, but like how your world is shrunk down, where when every character becomes like a central character to the storyline, like where the guy working at the synagogue like happens to be Jairus, whose daughter is going to get raised, or like you get this sense of like a collapsed world and everything being quite small when like C-3PO is just turning up everywhere, so that's unrelated perhaps, but
wait, I'm sorry, which one in The Chosen is the equivalent of C-3PO?
In this case it's Jairus. Okay, Jairus is C-3PO.
Wait, I'm sorry, which one in The Chosen is C-3PO? I'm confused. So I was trying to do a Matthew voice. But okay.
We really need to wrap this show up, boys.
One more gripe. I'm not gonna. Okay, Pilate and his wife. I'm not gonna pick on the actors. Why is Pilate having guys crucified like right outside of his like scene, like in his scenic view from his nice house? Like that makes no sense. They would have been like on the outskirts of town or something.
Yeah.
It would have been, or in the middle of the road where people were coming in or something.
It's like you're inside your house and you can hear their pained screams outside.
Yeah.
Why would that happen?
No, it
Pilate
would not
never
have
do
happened.
that.
No, they were purposely crucified just outside the town by the city gate so that everyone would have to see them when they're coming in. But they're not defiling the city.
Pilate's wife's day would be ruined by like hearing the screams of the dying and looking at them from her balcony. What is that? That's ridiculous.
No. Well, I mean, it's worth remembering too. In paganism as well as in Judaism, dead bodies defile you. You don't want them near you. The cemeteries were always outside the city. That goes away with Christianity. Christianity is what brings like relics into the churches and the people out into the graveyards. But that would have been abhorrent to pagans and Jews. So you would not have had crucified people like, right outside your balcony, edifying you with their screams.